I and my fiancé are getting married soon, and his stepmother is holding my deceased grandmother's irreplaceable kimono hostage after backing out of wedding planning. I'm using someone else's account because I don't want this traced back to me, and honestly, I'm not in the right headspace to create a new account right now. Some background, sorry if this gets long, but the context matters. I'm a restoration conservator specializing in preserving family heirlooms and culturally significant textiles. Basically, I help save precious fabrics that carry important history and family stories. My job has given me a deep appreciation for how objects can connect us to our past and heritage. My fiancé Ryan works at his family's investment firm. His dad Gerald founded the company and is pretty much all about business all the time. Ryan's birth mom passed away when he was 14, and his dad remarried about a year later to Diane, who now handles client relations at the firm. She joined the company about 5 years ago and has been building up their social connections since then. Ryan and Diane have always had a strained relationship. She was pretty controlling during his teen years and had some major emotional outbursts. She now claims it was all due to undiagnosed anxiety, but never really apologized for how she treated him. Ryan has been trying to establish a healthier relationship with her for years, mostly to keep peace in the family, and because, let's be real, family business dynamics are complicated. I'm half Japanese, and honoring my late grandmother's traditions is really important to me. Ryan's family is Irish Catholic, so we've been planning a small wedding that incorporates elements from both of our backgrounds. I've been restoring my grandmother's wedding kimono for months to incorporate it into our ceremony as my something old and borrowed. Here's where things went sideways. Diane offered to handle our wedding planning as a gift, and Ryan saw it as a chance to finally build a better relationship with her. I was hesitant, but Ryan seemed so hopeful that I agreed. Honestly, I should have listened to my gut feeling, but hindsight and all that. Earlier this week, I was in my conservation studio examining a damaged kimono for a client when my phone chimed. It was a message from Diane. I've decided I won't be planning or attending your wedding. Please make other arrangements. That's it. No explanation, no conversation, just a text dropping the bomb and walking away. I immediately called Ryan, who was just as confused as I was. He promised to contact his dad as soon as he finished with his client meeting. That's when I remembered something that made me realize. Diane has possession of my grandmother's restored wedding kimono. I had shown it to her a few weeks ago, and she had offered to store it safely at their house since our apartment is small and lacks proper storage for such an item. For anyone who doesn't understand why this matters so much, this kimono is irreplaceable. Not just monetarily valuable, but it's one of the few items that survived when my grandmother's family was forced into internment camps during World War II. It represents my family's resilience and cultural heritage that they managed to preserve despite everything that happened to them. I spent 3 days calling and messaging Diane about returning the kimono. Nothing but silence. I finally texted her that the kimono is a culturally significant heirloom and that I'd need to involve authorities if it wasn't returned promptly. About 20 minutes after that text, Gerald called me. You've deeply hurt Diane with your accusations and threats. This isn't how our family handles disagreements. I tried to explain my concerns about the kimono, but he completely dismissed them. It's just an old dress. Diane knows more about proper wedding attire than your grandmother ever did. She was trying to save you from embarrassment. I managed to keep my voice steady and explain that the kimono was one of the few items that survived internment, making it irreplaceable beyond any monetary value. Something seemed to register with him. The call ended with Gerald agreeing that the kimono would be available for pickup the next morning. His tone suggested I was overreacting about family heritage nonsense when Diane was only trying to help. I didn't bother arguing further. I just wanted my grandmother's kimono back safely. When Ryan got home, he was caught in this position. He wants to support me, but there's this ingrained habit of appeasing his family to protect his position at the firm. He's being considered for partnership, and we both know his father and Diane have significant influence over that decision. I explained to Ryan that while I can replace a wedding planner, I cannot replace my grandmother's kimono. I'm worried about its condition after hearing Gerald's attitude. The preservation of textiles like this requires careful handling, controlled environments, and an understanding of their significance, none of which I trust Diane to provide, especially if she's angry. Ryan seems torn. He keeps saying things like, maybe she was just trying to help in her own way, and She probably doesn't understand the cultural significance. I get that he's trying to make peace, but it feels like he's missing the point. This isn't about misunderstanding, it's about respect. We're preparing to pick up the kimono tomorrow, and I'm starting to question whether our different cultural values around family heritage and obligation are more significant than I previously realized. I love Ryan, but I'm worried that this situation is revealing some fundamental differences in how we view family relationships and cultural respect. The most frustrating part is how this has all been framed as me being difficult or culturally obsessive. I'm not asking for anything extreme, just the return of a family heirloom and some basic respect for its significance. Ryan keeps saying we'll figure it out, and that once we have the kimono back, we can move forward with our own wedding plans. But I can't help feeling like this is just the beginning of a much bigger issue. If this is how they react to incorporating aspects of my culture into our wedding, what happens when we discuss how to raise potential future children, or celebrate holidays, or handle other family traditions? I'm at a loss about what to do next. Any advice about dealing with cultural dismissiveness from future in-laws while supporting my fiance's complicated family work situation would be appreciated. I don't want to make Ryan choose between me and his family business, but I also can't spend my life having my heritage dismissed as costumes or old dresses. Now for the first update. I'm honestly stunned by all the comments and support on my original post. Thank you, kind strangers, for the awards and messages. For those asking for an update about my grandmother's kimono situation, a lot has happened in the past few days. So we went to pick up the kimono yesterday morning. Ryan was unusually quiet during the drive over. Apparently, he'd received several texts from his dad about maintaining family harmony and considering the bigger picture. Eye roll. On the way there, Ryan finally told me that Diane had been upset because I didn't want to incorporate Catholic elements that were important to their family tradition. I was completely confused by this because I had actually agreed to hold the ceremony in their church. All I had asked was to include some Japanese traditions to honor my grandmother alongside their traditions. Ryan seemed just as confused as I was about this new narrative. When we pulled up to the house, I immediately noticed both cars were gone. This was strange considering we had confirmed the pickup time just last night, and he had specifically said they would be home. Ryan tried calling his dad, but it went straight to voicemail. As we walked up to the front door, there was my grandmother's kimono, and then I saw it, a coffee mug deliberately placed on one corner of the kimono. Beside the kimono was a printed article about modern weddings moving beyond outdated traditions. There was also a handwritten note, "Thought you might need this education on contemporary ceremonies." While I gathered up the kimono, Ryan just stood there reading the note. This kimono had been deliberately damaged on a doorstep by my future mother-in-law. My phone chimed with a new message. Diane had sent a group text to both families. I've tried my best to guide Ryan and my name toward a tasteful wedding that honors our family traditions, but some people aren't ready to listen to experience. Several of Ryan's aunts had already responded with supportive emojis for Diane. Ryan immediately called his dad, finally reaching him and demanding an explanation. I couldn't hear Gerald's side, but from Ryan's responses, it sounded like Gerald was downplaying everything as a miscommunication and suggesting we were overreacting. While Ryan was still on the phone, I got a message from his sister warning me that Diane had been making comments at the family company about my difficult personality and cultural obsessions to some of the partners. Great, so she was trying to harm my reputation professionally too. Edit. So many of you have asked if I have photos documenting the damage. Yes, I immediately took photos from multiple angles showing the coffee stain and the condition of the kimono. My professional training kicked in, and to those offering to help with the restoration, you have no idea how much that means to me, though I'm hoping to handle it myself given my expertise. On the drive home, Ryan's phone kept buzzing with messages. 3 of his relatives had texted expressing concern about my unreasonable expectations and reminding him how important family unity was for the business. Ryan didn't respond to any of them. At a stoplight, I quickly checked my own phone and discovered Diane had posted an Instagram story about entitled young couples who don't respect their elders and had tagged several client contacts from the family firm. She was using their professional network to spread her narrative against us. Ryan saw me looking at this. The minute we got back to our apartment, I set up my emergency conservation equipment. For anyone who doesn't work with antique textiles, time is critical when dealing with stains. The coffee stain might be impossible to completely remove, and I explained this to Ryan as I worked. He called his sister while I was setting up, putting her on speaker. She was sympathetic, but also warned Ryan that Diane had been having meetings with his father about upcoming partnership decisions. The implication was clear. This wedding conflict could affect Ryan's career prospects at the firm. His sister is in accounting at the company, so she hears things. As I examined the kimono, I noticed something. Several of the stitches had been cut. These weren't accidental snags or damage from being left outside. Someone had deliberately taken scissors to parts of the embroidery. The cuts were not random. This was intentional. When I showed Ryan, he had been trying to rationalize Diane's behavior since we'd started wedding planning. She's just anxious about change, she has control issues, etc. But seeing the deliberate damage made him understand that this wasn't normal conflict with my future mother-in-law. Ryan suggested we meet with his father alone to discuss the situation professionally. He thought Gerald might be more reasonable without Diane present, especially if we framed it as a business discussion. Dad respects data and documentation, Ryan explained. If we approach this like we would a business problem rather than a personal conflict, he might actually listen. I agreed it was worth trying, though at this point I was struggling to see how we could move forward with his family. The wedding is supposed to be in 3 months, and right now I can't imagine being around Diane. Ryan seems determined to fix this somehow, but I'm worried he's underestimating how deep this goes. This isn't just about a damaged kimono anymore. It's about the blatant disrespect for my heritage, and Diane actively trying to sabotage both my reputation and Ryan's position in the family business. I'm going to focus on repairing the kimono as much as possible over the next few days, while Ryan works on setting up the meeting with his father. Another part of me refuses to let Diane win by making us abandon the wedding we actually want. Thanks for listening to this update. I'm still processing everything that's happened, but your comments on my last post helped me feel validated that I'm not overreacting to this situation. I'll update again after we meet with Ryan's dad, assuming that actually happens. Any advice on handling extremely manipulative in-laws would be appreciated, especially from anyone who's dealt with cultural dismissiveness like this. Now for the second update. For those asking about my damaged kimono situation, things have taken a truly wild turn since my last post, which got locked by mods. Sorry about that. I appreciate all the supportive messages and advice you've sent over the past few days. After examining the kimono more carefully at home, I decided to get a second opinion from my colleague at the conservation lab. She confirmed what I already suspected. The damage was 100% intentional. The cuts were made with sharp scissors in specific places that would be difficult to repair, and the coffee stain was placed exactly where it would do maximum damage to the hand-painted section. The restoration estimate came in at $6,200. Yes, seriously. Repairing antique silk is incredibly specialized work, and some of the dyes used in the original piece aren't even available anymore. I'm certified to do basic preservation work, but this level of damage requires someone with more specialized equipment than I have access to. While I was dealing with the kimono situation, Ryan was busy setting up a meeting with his dad. He suggested we approach this like a business problem rather than a family drama. His dad respects data and documentation, so we planned to bring photos of the damage and the restoration quote to show the tangible impact of Diane's actions. The day before our scheduled lunch, I got a concerning call from the director of the museum, where I occasionally consult. Apparently, someone identifying herself as my mother-in-law had called inquiring about my professional reputation and suggesting I take liberties with historical accuracy in my work. Diane was now actively trying to damage my professional relationships. For context, in my field, reputation is everything. One hint of unprofessional conduct can torpedo years of career building. When I told Ryan about this latest development, he was angry but tried to stay focused on our strategy. "This actually helps our case," he said. "It shows a pattern of behavior that goes beyond wedding disagreements. Dad might dismiss family drama, but he understands professional sabotage." Ryan assured me that focusing on the business implications would get through to his father, even if emotional arguments about the kimono's importance hadn't resonated. I wasn't so sure, but at this point, I was willing to try anything. We arrived at the investment firm 15 minutes early. I'm always early when nervous. Anyone else? The receptionist directed us to the main conference room, and the moment we walked in, instead of just Gerald waiting for us, Diane was there too, sitting at Gerald's right hand. She looked like she belonged in that conference room more than I did. Gerald opened the meeting, Let's discuss how we're going to move forward as a family, because this wedding situation is now affecting company morale. Not even a hello, just straight to how our wedding was inconveniencing his business. I tried to steer the conversation to the damaged kimono by using my documentation, but Diane immediately cut me off. That old thing was falling apart anyway, she said with a dismissive wave. I was trying to show you that incorporating it would look unprofessional and reflect poorly on the family image. Ryan finally spoke up. He explained that the kimono wasn't just a decoration, but represented my family surviving historical trauma and preserving their heritage through internment camps and displacement. He connected it to concepts they might understand: legacy, heritage, family values. I was proud of him. Diane's expression hardened. When you marry into this family, you represent our values and traditions. The Wheeler name stands for something in this community, and costume party weddings don't align with our brand. Costume party weddings? But instead, I channeled my professional experience dealing with difficult clients. I calmly placed my documentation on the table: photos of the damaged kimono from multiple angles, the conservation assessment highlighting the intentional nature of the damage, and the restoration quote for $6,200. The room fell completely silent as Gerald examined the photos. Deliberate property damage with documented evidence is a very different problem than family wedding squabbles. That's when Diane cracked. I've spent 5 years rebuilding this family's social connections after your mother's death left us isolated. I won't let some outsider with her foreign trinkets undermine everything I've accomplished. Foreign trinkets. Gerald quickly ended the meeting, suggesting we all take some time to cool off and reassess. He asked Ryan to stay behind for a private conversation, while an assistant escorted me to the reception area. Ryan and his father were in conversation. After about 20 minutes, Ryan emerged looking both resolute and tense. On the drive home, Ryan was quiet until we were halfway back to our apartment. Then he revealed what his father had offered. Gerald would pay for the kimono restoration if we agreed to a larger, more appropriate wedding with the firm's major clients invited. Basically, turn our intimate wedding into a business networking event. Yikes. But that wasn't all. Ryan hesitated before adding the unspoken part of the deal. His partnership track at the firm depended on demonstrating family unity. Gerald had suggested that postponing the wedding entirely might be best for everyone's career prospects. In other words, my fiancé was being professionally blackmailed by his own father. We spent the rest of the evening talking through our options. Ryan is torn between standing up to his family and protecting his career that he's worked toward for years. I'm increasingly wondering if this is all a preview of what married life would be like with these people as in-laws. Part of me wants to just elope and be done with it, but another part refuses to let Diane win by making us abandon the wedding we actually want. Edit. Several people have asked if we've considered legal action. Yes, we've looked into it. The intentional property damage is pretty clear-cut, but we're hesitant to escalate things to that level while Ryan still works at the family firm. And yes, Ryan is actively job hunting now. He started updating his resume the night after the meeting. I've been looking into backup career options just in case Ryan decides to leave the family business. He's also reaching out to some mentors from business school to explore other opportunities. It feels like we're preparing for war. I'm still processing everything that's happened and trying to figure out our next steps. If we give in on this, I worry it sets a precedent for Diane controlling other aspects of our life together. But fighting back could mean Ryan losing his career and family relationships all at once. Would you stand your ground or try to find a compromise somewhere? Now for the final update. Final update on the kimono wedding disaster with my future in-laws. Still can't believe I'm writing this conclusion. First, I want to thank everyone who's been following along and offering advice. You all truly helped me stay sane through this difficult situation. It's been about a month since my last update. Wow, time flies when you're dealing with family drama and legal threats. After that meeting at Gerald's firm where Diane called our wedding plans a costume party and my family heirloom foreign trinkets, Ryan and I spent the next week in strategy mode. I documented everything that had happened. Every text, email, and interaction with Diane and Gerald going back months. To everyone who told me to keep receipts, you were right. I created a detailed timeline showing the escalation from Diane's comments to the damage of the kimono and attempts to sabotage my professional reputation. Meanwhile, Ryan was doing some investigating of his own. He mentioned offhand to his sister about feeling trapped at the family firm, and she revealed something: Apparently, their late mother had left Ryan a separate inheritance and actual partnership shares that Gerald had been managing until Ryan was ready. This was information Gerald had never shared with Ryan. His sister even had copies of some of the paperwork that confirmed this. With this new information, I contacted my cousin, who's an attorney specializing in cultural property law. She agreed to review our situation pro bono and immediately identified several issues: the intentional damage to the kimono, workplace intimidation, and attempts at professional defamation. She suggested we stop thinking about this as a family disagreement and start approaching it as a legal matter, which honestly felt terrifying but necessary at this point. Things took another unexpected turn when 3 long-standing clients of the firm reached out to Ryan directly. These people had been friends with his mother and had heard rumors about tension at the company. They expressed concern about the firm's stability and Ryan's position there. Gerald's image was already suffering, but not because of us. After discussing our options, and honestly, lying awake for several nights stress-sweating, we decided to request another meeting at the family firm. But this time, we specifically asked for Gerald, Diane, and the company's legal counsel to be present, and we brought my cousin as our attorney. The moment we walked in with legal representation, the room dynamics changed. This wasn't going to be another family discussion where Gerald and Diane could ignore us. Ryan opened by placing a folder on the conference table containing copies of his mother's will and ownership documents, along with a letter from our attorney highlighting specific clauses regarding Ryan's inheritance and voting shares. The company lawyer had no idea about any of this and asked for a few minutes to review the documents. Gerald's face showed a mixture of shock and a grudging respect I'd never seen him direct at Ryan before. Diane just kept opening and closing her mouth, petty, but deeply satisfying to witness. While they were processing that information, I presented our documented timeline of the kimono damage, workplace intimidation, and professional sabotage attempts. Our attorney calmly explained that these constituted offenses regardless of family relationships, and that we were prepared to pursue legal remedies if necessary. When Diane started to protest, Ryan simply said, "This isn't about the wedding anymore. This is about recognizing boundaries and consequences." That was it. 4 simple sentences, but coming from Ryan, who had spent his entire adult life trying to please these people, they had a significant impact. Gerald immediately started damage control. I've seen enough business negotiations with Ryan to recognize the exact moment someone realizes they've lost all leverage. He suggested they take a step back and reassess as a family, while nervously glancing between the legal documentation and his company's lawyer, who wasn't making eye contact with anyone. Our attorney clearly laid out our terms: full compensation for the kimono restoration, a formal retraction of statements made to my professional contacts, and written acknowledgement that the wedding would proceed according to our wishes, not theirs. After some back and forth with the company lawyer speaking privately with Gerald, he reluctantly agreed to all terms. He even added that perhaps Diane should take a leave of absence from company duties to focus on personal matters, which was the first time I'd ever seen him publicly set a boundary with his wife. Diane reacted negatively. The following weeks were challenging. Gerald transferred the promised restoration funds, plus an additional inconvenience fee, and set up the process to transfer Ryan's inheritance into accounts solely in Ryan's name. He remained distant during their limited interactions at work, but Ryan said the behavior felt different than before, less manipulative and more like genuine processing, or possibly grief over losing control, who knows. Several family members reached out to Ryan after hearing a sanitized version of events from Gerald. The reactions were split between those who seemed genuinely relieved someone finally stood up to Diane. Apparently we weren't the first victims of her controlling behavior, and those who felt Ryan had betrayed family loyalty by involving attorneys. The kimono restoration began with my colleague, who specializes in antique textiles. While assessing the damage, she discovered something that suggested the garment had been handled repeatedly without permission. Not just damaged that one time on the porch as we'd thought. She had likely been taking it out multiple times to mock it or try it on. The thought still makes me nauseous. 2 weeks before our now rescheduled wedding, Ryan received a formal company announcement that he would be establishing an independent division of the family firm. This arrangement gives him professional autonomy while maintaining the family business connection, and importantly, access to his mother's clients who specifically want to work with him. It's not perfect, but it's a compromise Ryan feels comfortable with for now, while he explores long-term options. As for the wedding, we've scaled it back even further and moved the venue to my aunt's property. No chance of last-minute Diane interference. The kimono restoration won't be complete in time, but my grandmother's sister has offered her own kimono elements to incorporate instead, which feels like the perfect response to Diane's attempts to erase my heritage. Gerald sent a gift but declined to attend due to prior commitments, and Diane is apparently on a wellness retreat that conveniently coincides with our wedding date. Ryan's sister will be attending as his only immediate family representative, and honestly, we're both much happier with this arrangement. I'm still processing everything that happened, and probably will be for years, but in a weird way, I'm grateful this all came to a head before the wedding rather than after. Ryan and I have had some of the most difficult but important conversations of our relationship, and I've never felt more certain about marrying him. Seeing him finally stand up to his family and choose our future together over their manipulation was the reassurance I needed that we're on the same team. Edit. A lot of people have asked for an update on my professional contacts that Diane tried to sabotage. I'm happy to report that my reputation remained intact. The museum director actually called me last week offering a more permanent consulting position, saying she was impressed by my professionalism during a difficult situation. Apparently, Diane's call had the opposite effect of what she intended. Also, we eloped last weekend in a private ceremony with just our closest friends before the official wedding next month. It felt right to have something that was just for us, without any drama. I'm finally at peace with everything that happened with the kimono situation, even though it unfolded nothing like I expected. Thank you to this community for helping me navigate one of the most stressful periods of my life. Your support truly made a difference.